Tonight's episode of the 31st Lap Podcast is brought to you by DirtTrackDigest.com. If it's on dirt, it's on Dirt Track Digest.
This is the 31st Lap Podcast, recorded live in the studios of FingerLakes1.com in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now, your host, Chris Marquardt.
Good afternoon, good evening, welcome to the 31st Lap. I'm Chris Marquardt for episode number 149 of the 31st Lap. We're going to be doing a bit of an abridged version, a couple changes to the flow as well through the course of tonight. We've got a good look right here at my Monday night partner. Brian Tompkins is joining me here in studio. You recognize him from FingerLakes1.tv fame, the crash course on Monday nights. He has a long lineage in the racing world. That's actually where we met first. He was crewing on his brother Gary Tompkins' car, who is former Mr. Dirt champion, former Brewerton track champion, two-time Rolling Wheels champion. And we're going to be talking a little bit of modified racing, a little bit of Florida, Daytona stuff as we get through it. Jumping right into it, we're not going to be here all night long because the twins, the Gatorade duels, as it were, they started here just about 15 minutes ago. And I know pretty much everybody who isn't watching the dirt racing from down in Florida is probably tuning into those. So we're going to keep it short and sweet. Cover a couple bases. The big news that's coming out of everything from Florida at this point is it's essentially old news. Brett Hearn picking up his... Oh, that's not the one. We got to reprogram some keys here. There we go. Yeah, it's crazy how that works sometimes, huh? But Brett Hearn coming away with his 861st career win and his 19th win in Florida. And that guy, he goes down there with his equipment and just says, hey, I'm gonna maybe try it out, and it seems to pay off for him every year.
Every year it seems like he goes down there and takes everybody's money and comes home and kind of does the same when he gets back up here. You know? As long as I can remember, Brett's been going down there and kicking everybody's butt, so not much has changed.
No, and somewhat dominating fashion. I mean, he looked pretty good doing it. And
that's the way it sounded.
And not a bad run for our friend Justin Harris. He was in competition down there. He ended up finishing 8th overall. Anthony Perigo was an early leader. Ended up second. Jamie Mills, another former winner down there in Florida. He came home third. Larry White, Billy Pouch, rounding out your top five. Matt Shepard was 6th across the line. Did you ever get the chance to go down to Florida and check that track out and experience Volusia and Speed Weeks?
We've never raced in Florida. It's always been a tough deal. If you win, you make a little bit of money, but after that, the pay has always dropped off significantly. We just never had a team or a budget to where that was really, possible to go down there and do that. Plus, I've heard from a lot of guys you can't really learn a lot about stuff for up here down there. So,
right.
I mean, it would have been nice to get out of New York when it's negative 21 up here, and they're complaining down there because it's 48 tonight. But It would be nice to go, but we never made it.
Mandy Pouch has a column up on Dirt Track Digest that she was talking at length about some of the struggles that her and that she and the team were going through. Billy Pouch, who, by the way, he was sick there for a while and doing a really good job. He's corrected his diet, he's corrected his smoking, and doing all that stuff, and certainly looking quite a bit healthier than what he was. They went down there somewhat unprepared. And the local Walmart and the local Target was not abundantly stocked with winter hats, winter gloves, or anything along those lines.
Yeah, not a lot of that down in Florida.
No, not this time of year.
No.
I guess not in February.
No,
up here. Brett Hearn was looking real good earlier in the week when they ran at Golden Isles on Sunday. Danny Johnson ended up beating him at the line, which triumphant return for Danny to kick off the season, and put on a heck of a show. Really set a high bar for the modifieds being in action at Golden Isle, which was that place has undergone so many different facelifts. I mean, that was the track that Earl Pearson, lest I make a mistake, I believe it was Earl Pearson, was clocked doing over 170 going into turn 3 in a late model. Way back when. Wow. It was they called it an oil clay track.
How big of a track is it?
When at one point it was 5/8. At one point it was 4/10. I think it's back to a 4/10 format now. It was a half mile at one point. That was like the oil clay.
Yeah.
where it's insanely grippy.
Yeah.
Well, late models liked that.
Oh, yeah. Late models like tacky. All race cars like tacky.
And he just sailed it off into the third turn and was just holding it. And there was we had the promoter on the show here, and he talked about it was legit, man. There was a Georgia State trooper with a radar gun standing in the corner, and he came across and clicked those digits, and everybody's jaw was on the ground. But they've undergone a lot of changes, and here they go, setting the bar. And the plan is that they're going to have this race for the modifieds again next year, with plans of making it bigger and building it into something.
Cool, very cool. It's always good for the modifieds to get out, explore some new territory. I've heard many drivers say, and I've heard fans, when we used to go to Charlotte, I'd go down, a lot of people don't see them, but once they do, they're impressed with the racing. And I'm obviously biased growing up in the Northeast, but I've always felt that the modifieds put on the best dirt race, in that there's more side-by-side racing. Sprints kind of get stretched out, late models kind of get stretched out, but it just seems like, and again, I'm biased and I've seen thousands of dirt modified races, but it just seems like that, for the most part, the racing is better in the dirt modifieds. That's just,
The one time, and I was driving Mike Mallett, who's down in Florida, along with John Balmas, who are usually on the show. I drive them crazy because I select one instance to fight that argument when I was at Lernerville, and the late models were there, and with 10 laps to go, the leader had a half lap lead, and with 5 laps to go, they were 3 wide in lap traffic for the win, and that is the argument that I make.
Yeah.
As to why I like the late models, and it's wrong because there's thousands of late model races every year that probably aren't nearly that good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you go to some modified races, and one guy just checks out and it's gone. But I mean, I've seen a lot of sprint car races. When I was a kid, the late model still ran up here, and obviously it was a different late model than what today's are. But I mean, they were good racing. It was good racing, but the Outlaws and stuff. Sometimes there isn't a whole lot of passing. I mean, when Timmy won at Canandaigua, that was a pretty racy, race. Timmy was running the bottom with a late model, which he was never a fan of with a modified. But like you said, in Victory Lane, he finally got it to roll the bottom. But again, I'm biased, but I've seen the best sprint car race I've ever saw. I think was at Syracuse between. The Wild Child, Jack Howdenchild, and Steve Kinzer. They were beating and banging, and
timeless Steve Kinzer.
Yeah, and I mean this was probably 20 years ago or better. But I mean, they were swapping back and forth, and it was good enough to where Kinzer went over and hugged Howdenchild in Victory Lane after the race, and I've never seen Kinzer hug anybody, let alone a fellow competitor. So that was a real impressive race. And like I said, I've seen some good late model stuff, but I just think as a whole, by modified I mean 358 and dirt and the big blocks. That style of car, from what I've seen, is definitely great racing.
Bittersweet note for Brett Hearn's win that I was remiss to mention.
Brian Stevens.
Brian Stevens lost his battle with cancer, so sort of a rewarding night that Brett Hearn was able to put the car in Victory Lane. In talking with people online, when you talk about you're home to the modifieds, they automatically default to the other group of modifieds that were running down in Volusia with the UMPs, which has loosely, I mean, for comparison's argument, they look like, depending on where you stand, an IMCA modified, an E-mod, a B-mod, whatever.
Yeah.
Essentially the same idea. Ty Dillon, Austin Dillon did a really good job down there this year.
Al Geyer won one.
Yep, he picked up one.
I think Wallace might have got one too, didn't he?
I missed his win. I know Kenny Schrader was second to Ty Dillon in Ty Dillon's second win down there. And then Scott Bloomquist picked up a late model win earlier this week. He won last night with the late model at Volusia.
Yep.
And people don't know what you're talking about. Essentially, when you talk about you being in an area that's predominantly modified, it's ruled by modifieds. I mean, even the IMCAs are getting increasingly. I don't know if it's fair to say they're getting increasingly rare. That's not accurate. But the modifieds up here, when they go out of town, it exposes people to a new type of racing, and I think it's it's a bit of a lost jewel. People get
Yeah.
to see that stuff, and it really intrigues them because it's something like they've never seen before.
It's, I mean, definite. And like our IMCA modifieds that run around here, they're not the same beast as the ones that look like them that they run in
Right.
the West. I mean, out there, they've got some nasty motors, and they're a fast and aggressive race car. But
And you can put those motors in a derby car.
yes, they do, and many of our friends do. But I guess it's it comes from what you've learned, what you grew up with. But it's good to see dirt, any form of dirt racing get some publicity. By the time you make it to NASCAR, it's not enough gets talked about the dirt there. I mean, in passing they'll mention what guys did coming through, but dirt really is the grassroots, and I mean people really have to it's good when it gets some press.
Is it special still that the modifieds go to Florida? I mean, that's one thing that we've sort of is it worn out. The big talk is always that the season starts down there during speed weeks. You never know who's going to show up in the pits and who's going to show up in a backup car. It was nice that the guys got to go to Georgia. I mean, I remember the big deal when they first kicked down the doors and got into Hagerstown, and I think it was a case where they got into Hagerstown again for the first time because they'd been there years and years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And look at all the races that Bob McCready's won, traveling in different parts of the country. He's won
Everywhere.
races that were and weren't sanctioned by dirt in Texas, Louisiana, stuff like that. So, the fact that they go to Florida, I don't know if that was as big a hook as them having the race at Golden Isles in Georgia, but certainly, I mean, with the field of cars, you can't shake a stick at it. They've got four heats on deck for tonight. Right now.
I mean, I definitely think it's a big deal. I mean, because they go down there, and like you said, you never know who's going to be in the pits down there. You never know, and for the most part, I think they're running in front of packed houses every night.
Mm-hmm.
When you show off your wares in front of people like that, it's just like when they brought all three classes together for the World Finals at Charlotte. I mean, that's modifieds are running in front of, I couldn't even tell you what those stands hold, probably 30,000 people,
Yeah.
40,000 people, and then the pits are standing room only. I mean, it definitely improves the sport. I mean, I would definitely like to see it get a little more publicity, a little more publicity on TV, so the guys could try to get some of the big sponsorships that are out there. The part stores, the restaurants, because the fan base is there, and I mean that's they go to places like McDonald's or Lowe's or someplace like that. That's, I mean, their fans go there. I wish that there was more TV coverage and stuff like that for these guys, so I could get some of the bigger sponsors. But it's kind of the same battle they've always been fighting.
That's for sure. I mean, it's almost as if when now that dirt car is back on far more solid footing than it was maybe 10 years ago. That whole dynamic when World of Outlaws got sucked up into the same tornado as everything else and it all became dirt car across the board. It seemed as though the modifieds were getting sort of pushed to the back burner. It's like, okay, we got the name that we want. The modifieds, it's sort of a necessary evil that we're not going to worry about too much. But it certainly turned things around. I don't know if it injected any more money or sponsorship, so to say, into the dirt modifieds, the Northeast program. But it certainly did put them on a different pedestal. And then, unfortunately, about the same time frame within that 5-year span of all that stuff really taking shape, then we lost speed. So now everything was tape delayed, and CBS Sports Network picked it up, and
Fox Sports.
Fox Sports has done some of it, yeah, and Syracuse has been on TV now. The World Finals have been on TV, and it gives the modified guys a chance to at least be on that same plane and be aside of the World Finals. This is one of the only times that you see the modifieds and the late models running together.
And it's back in the day they had the Empire Series at Wheatsport, and that was great. I mean, it was a local
It was
cable.
weekly.
It was a weekly cable show, and the feature was on, and that was awesome. And they started doing some of the tour races on TV, and I somehow I don't know how, but I really wish that that we could get back to doing that sort of thing. 'Cause I mean, they're still a great product, and I mean, there's so many young guys that are coming up through. I definitely think the sport has got a lot of potential still, and it's got a great future. But somehow they gotta they got to get more money, to the drivers. They got to get more money to the owners. I just don't know. I don't know the answer to it.
Yeah, that's an age-old question that no matter what era that you're in, that is the argument that is always going to be out there. Stuff always costs more money than it's essentially worth.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like that in every motorsport. That's just how it is. Obviously we have our other show together with talking Derby, and guys, if you tell the average race fan that a demolition Derby driver spends $7,500 on a Derby motor, they'll laugh and say, well, why would you do that? Well, because you're going to run that $7,500 motor in 2 or 3 or 4 shows where you can win 10 or 11 grand. But then you tell the average Derby guy that modified guys are spending $30,000 to $60,000 on a motor, and you say, well, why are they going to do that? It's, well, if they win a series race, it's $6 grand, and if they win Syracuse, it's 50. But they're, the home shows, they don't make quite as much. It's tough. I just, like I said, I somehow, motorsports as a whole needs to be helped, but there isn't any easy answer.
There is no easy answer, because if there was, we would have it by now.
Yep.
You can hear all sorts of the updates on Dirt Track Digest trickling in. We've got late model heats around the track right now. The modifieds are going to follow them. Give you some idea. Heat 1, Lawback, Danny Johnson are going to lead him. Hearn is in that heat along with Rich Scalata. The second heat, Friesen and Britton are going to lead him to the line. Eric Rudolph's on the track with them, along with Randy Chrysler. Jimmy Horton and Jeremy Wilder also on the track. Fuller is going to sit on the pole for heat lineup number 3 with Shepard and Matt Williamson, Justin Harris, Mario Claire, Vic Coffey, Tyler Seary, and Roger Chrysler. That's a full heat 3. And the final heat is going to be Billy Pauch on the pole with Jamie Mills, Williams Wright, and Perego, Phelps, Rouser, Corvo, rounding out heat number 4. And it's going to be a busy one right there.
Good to hear Billy Pauch is doing better. He
got a little scary, didn't it?
Yeah, the first heat or the first series race that my brother ever won at Hagerstown, we were standing there afterwards in the pits, and we were just all on cloud 9. Billy Pauch came walking by, stopped, and came over and shook my brother's hand and congratulated him. Really, he didn't have to do it. He could just, because I don't remember where he finished, to be honest, but he didn't win, so I'm sure he wasn't real happy. But he took the time to stop and say, "Hey, nice job," and shook his hand, and very cool. It's cool, when guys that are that successful, just do a little thing like that.
I really enjoy watching Billy Pauch race, right? And I always have. When I worked at Gator News, they used to pick on me about Billy Pauch's last name. It's not Pouch; it should be Pauch, or Pauk, or any number of different intentional mispronunciations, just to mess with me, because it's a guy that I like watching. So I finally got the chance to go to New Egypt, which was an adventure unto itself, and got in there. And Billy, it was a dirt sanctioned race, and Billy was in competition, and he ended up finishing. I think he ended up finishing second. He had a real good run. He was second place. And I remember standing there waiting for him to get a break from his receiving line, and thinking in the back of my head, I got to interview Billy Pauch. Or is it Pauch? Is it? I just don't call him Pauch. That's it. Just don't call him Pauch. Don't call him. And I'm just, and then the line's empty, and there's Billy Pauch looking at me. Can I help you? Yes. Yes, you can. Completely caught me off guard, and we just stuck to sir. It was much easier. There was no concerns there. That's funny. It was really, really cool.
Who won the feature?
I believe Matt Shepard won. He did pretty well in New Egypt there for quite a stretch.
Yeah, he won, or he ran it for his hometown track one year, right?
Yeah, he won it. I believe he won the track championship.
And that's when there was like 10 grand to win for the title.
Insane, yeah.
Yeah, and he went down there and
he ran down there when he had the Ross car.
I believe so, yes.
The yellow 44.
Yep. Used to be a big motor track. They used to have some smoke to get around down there.
It had been prepared a little bit different when the Dirt Tour was in town, so it was somewhat rough. And the guys that were getting around there the best would come off of turn 2 and basically aim to turn 4 and essentially eliminate the dog leg.
Yeah.
And they would just come off and just let it roll way to the outside and just do a straight shot down into almost like the way you eliminate a chicane on a road course. I mean, they would just
run through
get
the middle,
way outside and just hammer it right down into turn 3. Or 4, depending on if you count the chicane as a corner. But there were some guys that were out to lunch that were adding 4 and 5 chicanes on the backstretch. It was rough. If you were on, you were on, and if you were off, you were in trouble.
Do you remember, not to change the subject, but you're talking about rough track and how they were running it. Do you remember 2004, Evans Mills had the second series race of the year
When they were losing cars entirely.
Yeah, and we were in the Beachy car that year, and we started somewhere.
That was one of the title years.
That was the title year. And we started somewhere mid-pack, and we ended up second. Well, T-Mac was leading, and I love T-Mac. I love the way he drives because he is just on it. And we get to second, and we're staying about even with Timmy, and he's not really leaving us. We're not really gaining, kind of staying even. He is running every lap wide open, just thrashing. And I mean, I can remember, he'd go into 3 and the car would bounce, and he ended up winning. And we went over to victory lane afterwards, and my brother's laughing. He's like, "Man," he goes, I can't count the number of times I went into turn 3, and all four tires in his car were off the ground. And he goes, "It landed." He'd keep on going, and that was a heck of a show, though. That was neat to watch Timmy do that. But
they actually required after that race that the cars in the pits scrape the clay off their cars in the pits because they needed to put it back on the surface.
Yeah,
it was rough.
Yeah, it was.
There were spots where it got back down to the concrete.
Yeah.
in one of the turns, it was bad.
Yeah, yep.
But I mean, that's a product of April racing.
Yeah,
though.
April racing.
I mean, it's just that's
yep.
nature. Of the
Only
beast.
time I was ever there. It was fun though. It was a good night.
I was there once for a 358 race, I think. And it was the year after that happened, and the track was fine. I've been to Can-Am twice, up at the same neck of the woods. Can-Am, I was there one night where the track was, I don't know what the situation was, but it was like ice, and for some reason nobody could do anything with it. It was like legit ice, not grippy ice, And
not the dry slick that the guys come.
It wasn't dry slick. It was glazed figure skating, and you could see them. You could hear them at the start finish line. They would let off, and they would basically idle into the turn, and they would just turn it, and it would go right to the top, no matter what. People were making pit stops to unhook plug wires.
I've seen that happen before too. But we went to Can-Am a couple times.
Fun track.
Yeah, for whatever reason, my brother's always running good there. We picked up the tour win in the Beachy car. It was neat. Nice big open track. Usually pretty good racing. I can remember when we started racing and we were running second to Bob at Canandaigua, and he had a chunk of mud come up and knock a plug wire off, and it ended up helping him because it hooked the car up better. He wasn't spinning and won the feature. What are you looking at? Anything good over there?
I was pulling up. We were talking about the tracks up near the Canadian border, and there was some stuff on Cornwall that had come out this week.
Another cool track.
Yeah, Cornwall's a ball.
They run the late models and the sprints there. I'd like to watch that.
They got they're going to open up May 2nd 100-lap feature for the Sportsman as part of this Bandit Motorsport Sportsman Challenge. The modifieds are going to run 2 25-lap features with both of them getting guaranteed spots to the main event. It's going to be a 2-day weekend for their Spring Sizzler weekend, so that's going to be pretty neat. That track, we were there for a 358 tour race one time, and Roy Tarbell ended up getting out of shape coming off the corner, and he just rode that out of control all the way down the front stretch and ended up flipping and went through the chain link fence. And there's quite a divide between the retaining wall of the track and the front of the grandstands. And when he came through there, he ended up going through nose first and flopped over and then flopped over again lengthwise and came to rest on his wheels right past the end of the grandstands. It was like, if that trajectory had changed at all, he would have been sitting in the stands.
One of the coolest things I've ever saw at Can-Am, we were up there, and when we got there, I can't remember if it had started raining or been raining. Well, then it stopped. And we went up. We used to run the Series race on a Sunday, so we went up early and like everybody else, and we get there and we're waiting. All of a sudden it gets sunny and nice out. And I don't know where it came from, but somebody had a baseball, a glove, and a bat. So we go out. We were there. Billy Decker, Brett Hearn was there. There's a bunch of guys there. And Billy Decker starts pitching. And Billy Decker stood there and pitched for at least an hour straight, just fastballs right down the pike. Everybody, it was cool to see, some of the drivers get together. And, Brett was doing Brett took some swings. My brother was batting. It was neat to watch. It was cool.
And Billy Decker was throwing some serious heat.
Yes, yes, he was. Billy Decker was, but Billy Decker's definitely done some manual labor over his life. There's a little bit of strength in those shoulders, and he was throwing some heat. As a matter of fact, I remember Tommy Greco. McCready was there. Tommy Greco was still working on his late model or his modified, and one kind of came in high and tight to Tommy. And I said something like, Tommy, charge him out. He's like, that's Billy Decker. I ain't charging him out. What are you, nuts? But it was funny. We all laughed.
Timmy had a good run at the
Bubba Raceway, right?
In Ocala, yeah.
12th to 3rd or something.
And Darrell Lanigan ended up winning the race. And Timmy was leading early. He was a contender. Looked real good.
Yep.
He ended up finishing. He ended up right there in the equation. But
Lose your train?
no, I was turning around. I wanted to let you finish what you were doing right there. The late models are going to be back at Cornwall, what we were talking about on the 21st of June.
Cool.
So, mark your calendar.
Sprint cars or late models?
That's the late models. The big blocks are going to be back there on June 14th. That doesn't make any sense. The following Sunday.
Yeah, that's right. That's about right.
Yeah.
Because we always run on a Sunday up there. At least always have. I assume it's still the same schedule. I know stuff has changed some.
Not a lot. It's surprising. It's surprising how consistent things tend to be. They're going to have their Enduro up there again too. They're going to conclude on September 13th. I get sucked into reading about this stuff. Just some of the different stuff that the tracks try. It's.
How about a demolition derby on the front stretch up there?
I don't think it's wide enough. You can't do that. It's not wide enough.
Just point it north and south and let her eat. Sorry, racing fans.
I don't think it'd work.
It's pretty wide. You can get two modifieds in there side by side.
Yeah, with a shoehorn.
Well,
The 360s put on a great show up there.
I'll tell you what, I've seen a lot of guys run the corners with their right front up on the tire or up on the bank, and it loads it over like you wouldn't believe on the regular.
It helps out a lot.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Big blocks. I don't know if you followed this. Big blocks returning to Black Rock.
Yes.
Big blocks. Big blocks going to Black Rock.
It's big block, small block, right?
Combined, right?
Yeah,
combined.
I was actually here a few weeks ago. I was in the emergency room.
Traditionally, that was a small block
track. Yeah,
at least within the last 20 years.
And I was talking with Derek Pazziallo about that, and he was talking about what he was going to, trying to decide what motor he was going to run, and he's definitely running. He had a thing on Facebook today. He's going over and running, but they had some good racing there at the end of the year last year.
A really small big block.
He was hooking up pretty decent with his normal. I assume that it was his Canandaigua car he had over there last year, which has got a CC in it. And he had a couple top fives or a top five or two over there. He ran pretty good. We ran there with a small block for a year. It's generally a smooth track. It's the track. The track doesn't, won't beat your car up, but generally there's some.
I guess the turtles are going over. We had Mike Jackson on the show, and he talked at length about carving those turtles out of there.
Yeah.
Now that those came back, it changed the game a lot.
Yeah, those turtles are not fun. Not fun. They do all sorts of stuff to cars that shouldn't be done.
I remember Gil Teg had some great runs over there. Gil Teg, Charlie Donk.
Yep. We
both battled with Steve Payne, obviously.
Yeah. Steve definitely had that place figured out. That was a paycheck every week for him, pretty much.
That was a reliable source.
Yes.
How can you go wrong? I mean, that was one of the things that people used to say to Steve. It's like, why don't you go run with the modifieds at Brewerton? Because this one is way closer.
And it's pretty much a guaranteed win.
Yeah, well, that notwithstanding, it's going to be easier on my equipment. It's closer to home. We can bring family, get home at a decent time.
And it's pretty much a guaranteed win. At least it was back in the day.
Yeah, it sure was.
I mean, no disrespect to anybody, but Steve definitely had that place figured out. It fit his driving style, fit his setup. He was just good. He was good. I mean, like I said, when we ran the 1 year over there with him, we battled back and forth, and we got some wins, but Steve definitely got the majority.
I don't think I was there when Gary was running there on a regular basis.
That was like 95, 95-ish, 96-ish. It was the first full year that he ran for Billy Trout. So you were probably 8th or 9th grade, 10th grade, something like that. You weren't quite reporting yet.
No, I was not. No, I hadn't been to until I got the call to go down there. I don't think I'd ever even been to Black Rock that I can remember.
We went there. We went there a few times with the Street Stock Sportsman. And we ran, like I said, maybe it was the second year. I don't remember. It was either the first or second year we ran this full season over there, and didn't do bad. But it's always been. I mean, it's always been. They've always had a good car count. At least they used to. I haven't, been there religiously in years, but.
You were there last year. You got to hang out on the flag stand.
I did. Got to announce. That was my first ever announcing. Followed up on my second one a year later in Minnesota. So it was cool. It was cool.
What's it like, actually?
Boy.
This is something that I've always we've danced around this, but I've never actually asked you directly. What's it like to fuel a car on the pit lane at Syracuse? Because it strikes me as, in a word, terrifying.
The only thing I was ever afraid of dumping fuel was I wasn't afraid of being hit by my brother. I was always afraid of somebody coming in behind us and hitting him and me flying through the air with the greatest of ease. That's the only thing that ever really made me nervous. Syracuse is, I don't know. I mean, I've dumped fuel kind of all over, not literally, but I mean, I've dumped it at a lot of tracks, and I don't think it's any more. I think Middletown is more scary than Syracuse.
Yeah,
I mean, because you are on top of each other down there.
Right.
That's a pretty freaky. And the last time I did it at I think it was the last time I did it in Middletown, was the year that we won Mr. Dirt, and we had to finish within a spot of Brett. If we finished one spot behind Brett, we'd win the title, and he ended up winning, and we were second, and. So we're trying to figure out how much time, how much fuel, yada yada yada.
2 seconds of fuel, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Randy Kosaki, one of the greatest crew chiefs ever. At the beginning of the day, it started out, okay, we're going to go 4 seconds of fuel, and then it got down to no, we're going to go 3.5, then to 3, then 2.5, and he goes, I don't know, just make sure you get enough fuel in it. So he was pretty stressed that day, but luckily things worked out for us, and it was okay, but. I definitely think Middletown is probably the most, I wouldn't even say really nervous or scary, but if anything was going to happen, I would think it would happen at Middletown just because everybody's so close. I mean, you're close at Syracuse too, but there's a little more room.
Syracuse just seems like it's just utter chaos on pit lane.
You
know what I mean?
I mean, you do get them, 3 and 4 wide, but I mean, if you look at the 200 lapper at Rolling Wheels when we used to have that there, it would get the same way.
True.
I would always, the only thing I'd always ask my brother is just, you get to where you can get out, I can come to you. I just always felt it was easier to do that. When we, the last time I dumped fuel, which was the first year, my brother owned his own team, was at Syracuse, and, same thing. I mean, I hadn't done it in a while, but it was still the same thing. Just point it out and I'll get to you, and knock on wood, I've never had any real issues or close calls or anything. So, It was always fun. It was neat to be a part of the pit stop. Like
different experience than working in the pit stall on a weekly basis at Canandaigua.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't trade any of it, but it was all fun. It was all it was definitely neat to be a part of that stuff. I mean, I got drafted a couple times. My brother loaned my I would go up to Syracuse on Saturdays, and Saturday, hey, you're gonna dump fuel for this guy in the 358 race. Okay, great. I think I did it for Justin Harris a couple of years maybe, but it was fun. It was a cool way to spend a race.
You see anything crazy at the pits at Canandaigua?
See anything or been involved in anything?
Either one.
It depends. I mean, I can remember, like I said, my earliest memory of racing is going to Canandaigua when I was like 3 years old.
Who did you watch as a kid? I mean, you had to have a favorite.
Alan Johnson, Danny Johnson.
I assume that we could call you Little Brian Tompkins, but I don't think you were ever little.
I can remember when Mike McLaughlin won the season ender. Canandaigua always had a 100 lapper as their last race at the end of the year, And I can remember Mike McLaughlin winning it. And I remember saying, and I'd heard that that was his last year running on dirt. I remember asking my dad, how come he's not running dirt anymore, Dad? He said, you can't get to Daytona on dirt. And lo and behold, a few short years later, he was running, the Busch then or whatever it was called. But I've seen some stuff in the Canandaigua pits. We've been involved with some stuff in the Canandaigua pits. Involved in some stuff in the Rolling Wheels pits. But, it was a great place to grow up. I mean, I've, met a lot of great guys, had a lot of fun, Actually, last year, when my brother was working at a Dave Rouser's shop down the road, we stopped down there, and my oldest son quick change gears for the first time, and he was 11 when he did that, and that was roughly the age. I was like 10, and I was working on my brother's street stock, and my brother would go to work, Dad would go to work, and in the summer, if we had motor trouble or something, they'd tell me, and I'd have the motor ready to pull by the time they got home. I obviously couldn't chain fall it out, but I'd have everything unhooked, and it was definitely cool growing up in a racing family like that.
Your dad never raced, right?
No, he and my mom both worked for Glenn Donnelly when Glenn was first getting dirt off the ground. Dad has always been a huge racing fan. Waterloo Speedway was only like 12 miles from home. Dad was at the races one night, and some of the Canadian guys had some trouble, and they needed a place to work on their cars. And Dad said, "I'm 10 minutes from here. Let's go." And from then on, I mean, I believe that Dad said that was Lloyd Holt. Davey Moore has been at the house, Ivan Little, Mikey Granton, Cliff Norton, Terry Edwards. I mean, there's just a litany, or huge amount of Canadian guys that have been at the house. And so, I mean, we definitely grew up with it. It was cool. I definitely grew up in a racing family. Sometimes miss it, but, there's other stuff going on, so I haven't been able to make it as much as I'd like.
Is Gary's car still going to be out of the Rouser shop?
Yes.
Because we got Tim Fuller driving the Rouser car.
Yeah. It's not going to be they're not going to be working out of Stu's shop anymore. Dave has another shop. I'm not exactly sure where.
Oh, okay.
But they moved the stuff out of Stu's shop, Stu's shop to this other shop, and they'll be going out of there.
Nice.
So
it's going to be exciting to see Tim in a car again. Back around here.
I was going to ask him, which shithole tracks he wasn't looking forward to going to, but I figured that'd be inappropriate.
Coming back to being out of town, were you at Charlotte the year that Gary launched over the top of Bobby Varon's car?
Yes, it was.
How'd that go? What was that like?
I was standing on the backstretch.
Easily one of my most favorite Brian Tompkins stories.
I was standing on the backstretch by where the cars come off the track, and we'd had rough times at Charlotte from day one. And they went out, it started, and the next thing I know, my brother is flying through midair and then lands nose first.
Like a lawn dart.
Yes. And I remember looking, and Justin Harris wasn't running modifieds then. And he looked at me, and he had a look on his face of like, he was just in utter shock. And a safety truck took off. So I jumped on the back of the safety truck. And I don't remember the exact conversation, but the gist of it was, I'm riding this to the front stretch, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. So we get to the front stretch, and I jump off as the truck's still moving. I went over to my brother, and he had taken a pretty good shot to the head and wasn't feeling too good. And so I grabbed his helmet, and we walked back to the pits. And we're walking along talking, and he asked me what happened a couple times, and he wasn't, like I said, wasn't feeling real good. And so we start walking across the track and get up to the pits. And all of a sudden, here comes a herd of security. They're like, "You're out of here." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "No, you're leaving right now." And I said, "Okay." And the farther we walked down into the pits, the more security guys kept showing up. And I hadn't said anything bad. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't screamed. And they're like, "You have to leave right now." And I said, "Sir, I'm going to walk to my pit. I'll get into my rental car and drive out. No problem, sir. I'm out of here." And by the time we got to the pit, there was 10, 12 security guys making sure that I was going to leave. And I got in the car and said, see you guys at the motel and left. But that was my my escort out of the Charlotte Dirt Motor Speedway.
Where they hold the world finals.
Where they hold the world finals. I've been back since, and it was, thankfully, knock on wood, we've seemed to have gotten some of the bad lucks out of the way. We've had some sense, but I believe my brother still holds the track record there from 2004. I remember Randy.
I thought Billy Decker beat that last year.
He may have. I'm not sure. Like I said, I haven't been back.
Because they were turning some, Billy always time trials fast. So, it's sort of just a default.
Well, I know.
I thought that he,
when we went,
he's setting an insane, there were some crazy lap times put down last year.
The year we went in 04, they'd put the Syracuse motor in the Beachy car, and Randy asked my brother, what's it need? And he said, I don't know, but I want to be able to run around here wide open. And he went out there and ran around wide open and set the track record. And it was his for a long time. But I think we were running like third or fourth that night. And Matt Shepard lost a tire. Hit our right front, popped it. And then we ended up coming back up and finishing 7th or 8th from the back. So that was a pretty good run. Chris looks up track records.
I was trying to find it. Never got it there. I'm sure that there's... here we go. Dragway. They don't have them listed
dirt track.
For the dirt track there. I'd love to have it. That's interesting. I forgot that he held that for a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was a fun night.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think? Covered a lot of ground tonight. I didn't think we were going to go for this long. Almost 45 minutes.
Yeah. Good time. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, you probably want to hurry home so you can watch Daytona.
Taping it.
Taping it? Do you follow NASCAR real close?
Yeah, I up until football season starts, games start, I usually watch every race. If I'm home, I'll watch time trials. And, I'm, like I said, just big racing fan, into all of it pretty much.
Anything with a motor that makes a lot of noise, right?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah. Like offshore boat racing.
I have seen the unlimited hydroplanes run at Sampson State Park. You probably weren't born yet because
no.
I was young. I was like 2nd, 3rd grade, 4th grade, something like that. So
no, I have not seen that. Heard tell of the stories though.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Those
good time.
AC Speed World has a couple of those.
No,
offshore boats.
Offshore,
yeah. Those are the offshore boats that they've got, and those are phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, they're not cheap either.
No. I remember I was in college one time, and we got the fan. We got a guy that listens to our show religiously who's tuning in right now, and he just
hate me?
No, he asked.
Okay.
He asked just ask the general questions because you tune in at 31st lap, you expect to see Mike Mallett, and we've got Brian here, who's my co-host on the Crash Course on Monday nights, but his brother Gary Tompkins, he wants to know what's your brother up to this year. We touched a little bit on it. Canandaigua, presumably.
Yes, Canandaigua for sure, I believe. He's not positive what else. The last time I heard, like we don't see each other a lot during the winter. He lives in Clifton Springs, about 40 minutes from me, so we don't see each other a lot. As far as I know, I believe he's going to get a new chassis, new Bicknell for this year. And Canandaigua for sure, I think. And if he can get a little more backing, I think he'd like to run the tour again, but nothing's set in stone yet. I will actually be seeing him Saturday night. We're celebrating our dad's 77th birthday.
With his first cast on his foot.
Yes,
first one,
yes,
first of two.
He just got his cast. He's so, yep. So we'll be hanging out, eating some pizza. Pizza.
How's your dad adjusting to cast life?
He's not a fan. He's a very active person. Even if he doesn't do much more than go out in the garage and putter, he's been doing that forever, and he hasn't been able to do that. He's been stuck in the house since the end of January. So I'm hoping my parents make it to their 53rd wedding anniversary and they don't kill each other. Yeah. So, they always said the key to a happy marriage is, the man having a garage to go out to. So, but no, he's doing well. He's going to be all right. He's a pretty tough dude. He broke his ankle and then walked back up the steps and laid down on a couch inside. So
and pushed it back together.
And pushed it back into place.
The big bulgy part was pushing out, so he pushed it back in.
Yeah. That's when my son said, "Dad, I don't get my toughness from you. I get it from Grandpa." And I went, "Yeah, you're pretty much right there. I can't argue that point."
Skip the generation.
Yeah, I've straightened fingers out and stuff like that, but I don't know if I could push my ankle back in place. That
No way.
a little nerve-wracking.
I'm not. Won't be me. Did you see Josh? You see the picture of Josh today?
Josh.
Josh Decker.
No.
Our other Monday Night co-host dropped a hammer on his forehead and split his forehead open, and he walked it off like a boss. He said it almost put him out. He sent me a picture of it. Right? So I get a message from Josh, and I open it up, and I do not get my toughness from you or your grandpa, your dad. I open it up, and there's a bloody forehead picture of pretty Josh Decker, and there's blood trickling. I'm like, oh, we're gonna need to sit down.
Well, it's last year when remember when Gokenauer got hurt last year, and I showed you and Josh the pictures, and you guys are like, "Oh, both of you are like, oh."
That's Sam Bandow's always showing us pictures of stuff he does to turn his feet into clubs.
Yeah, bad, but
we're gonna see a lot of our racing friends and a lot of our Derby friends this coming weekend on the 28th, a week from Saturday, at the Owego banquet for the Northeast. Should be a lot of fun. I know Todd Height, who listens to the show, always tunes into this. He's a big racing fan, and
Utica Rome, right?
Yep, Utica Rome, and Dan Bolton, who all his cars are lettered by Rhino Graphics. Ryan Lund, he's a guy that has done cars that have run at Utica Rome. So
cool.
Blurring some lines tonight as we talk a little bit about Brian's racing background and just trade some war stories from back in the day, and I guess now at this point we could turn everybody listening in cyberspace over to either NASCAR or what everybody should be paying attention to, the Dirt Modifieds, as they compete at the Dirt Car Nationals down there in Volusia Speedway. I think that's going to do it for us this edition in the books of the Crash Course Podcast, or excuse me, 31st Lap Podcast. Boy, Mike would kill me if he was
Sorry,
here.
buddy.
Yep. But, again, that's going to do it for us. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us and taking in the 31st lap. We'll see you right back here again next week.